said, how can you maximize return of investment and drive patient safety by sterilization efforts? And if that I would give the word back.
So maybe quick for the, I think Marcel and I can talk already enough, maybe for the other three, quick like a 1 minute introduction. I know Craig and Martin you spoke last time, but again, you know, a little for the people listening in who do know you guys, and Sarah too, you know, maybe 2 minute quick introduction. Martin, I'll start with you.
Yes, hello, and thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this panel discussion. My name is Martin Hook, and I'm probably more like a strange bird in this audience because I'm probably the only one who has to deal with the dispensing of the medicines and with the verification and authentication of serial numbers on prescription packs of drugs. I've been involved with the subject for actually more than 11 years now, and I have given many talks and spent numerous hours on dealing with subjects such as aggregation and how to smooth the implementation of the Falsified Medicines Directive in the hospital setting. And I can only say I probably failed miserably in this respect, because this is still an enormous burden with little to no return for us at all. There is no increase in patient safety. There is no increase in any kind of safety. It's just more work for us, and the path to aggregation is long and stony, and we don't see much happening on that side.
Craig, a little introduction from you.
Thanks, Alf. Yeah, I'm Craig Allen-Rippick from GS1, based in Brussels. For those of you who don't know us, GS1 is a neutral, not-for-profit standards organization focused on developing and maintaining standards around identification, capturing, and sharing of information to improve supply chain efficiency and to make lives better for patients and for customers, and to make things more efficient for businesses. I'm our subject matter expert for EPCIS, which is our supply chain visibility enabling data sharing standard. And I'm also one of our subject matter experts for RFID. I've been involved in both areas for well over 15 years now.
Thank you. Ciao, hello. Maybe introduction.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Csaba Molnár, and I'm working here at Gedeon Richter. I'm responsible for serialization project management activities all over the world. Now my main focus on Latin American and Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan serialization, but I'm working on other serialization market also. So. And to be honest, I think it's a very interesting topic, since all participants of the serialization industry invested a lot of money to be compliant with the EU and other regulation. And I think now it's the time has came to think about how can we create a value from this serialization data, which are we creating, generating, and applying, and the secondary packages. So I think in the near future it will be a very hot topic to be discussed and to find a solution for everybody. Thank you.
So let me you know, ask a question and use myself as an example. I have heart surgery and I need to take very expensive heart surgery medication every day. And my argument with my doctor is always that I'm a horrible patient because I always forgetting it. You see, so coming back to that personalized medication, because he said if I knew when you take it, if you take it, it would feel more comfortable. So with that little Shangri-La future thing, how far are we on that like dream to know when someone like me not have taken the medication with all the stuff that comes a little bit into the era of personalized medication, but also that shows the revised engineering where we are. How far are we with this wishful thinking of my doctor?
Excuse me, sorry, it was a question for me because I hear a lot of echo. So.
For the whole panel. For the whole
I
panel.
can comment on
Okay,
that,
so
but
sorry.
I don't want to take all the space here. So
No, Martin, but stop enlighten me. You're mute, Martin, you're mute.
sorry, I hit it twice. I understand that the medication you're referring to is probably an oral medication, tablets that need to be swallowed. So there is no means to identify whether you have taken an individual tablet or not. The only means that would be there to sort of test whether there is at least some sort of adherence is already in the hands of your doctor, because if you need a fresh prescription because your old prescription is running out and you only ask for a new prescription 1 year after you received the last prescription, your doctor probably knows pretty well that you either found another doctor or you don't take the medication any longer. But your point is actually pretty valid, because I think when I first heard about the serialization, I thought this would be a smart move in order for pharmaceutical companies to perform phase 4 trials, because what they would need is basically the patient would only have to scan the respective pack, the FMD code, and the company would at least know that it's the proper medication, it's not expired, they know the lot number, and all these data are normally required for proper phase 4 trial. So they could actually utilize that information. To my best knowledge, this has not been done in recent phase 4 trials, but it could be utilized for that purpose. And but other than that, for measuring adherence of medication, you would have the possibility to scan the individual unit, which would be the tablet in your case, I guess, and that is at least, and it is not even considered in the FMD, which actually excludes the labeling of the primary packaging, something that concerns us hospital pharmacists very much, because we would greatly appreciate if we had the FMD code not only on the secondary packaging, which is in case of chemotherapy, Marcel referred to that, it's basically discarded. So what we give to the patient is without any secondary packaging. So we actually put this into a bag, we dilute it or whatnot, and so we would love to have a code on the primary packaging for track and trace of that product, but we don't, because it's excluded in the FMD, and that is certainly something we would like if we added.
Yeah, Martin, let me jump on that one, because I know that for clinical trials, something like this exists already. So I know there are companies that have for clinical trials, they have in the bottle, they have in the cap of the bottle, there's a counter. And every pill that you take out is counted, and then the code is on the cap as well. So you can scan with a near sensor. You put your mobile phone on it. It's recording the thing. It's also recording the time and the humidity that you take out the medication. So you take the medication out of the cap, and it's automatically counting. So this is already for clinical trials, it's already done yet.
Yes.
For products in emerging market, it's also a question about cost, because as you know, for example, serialization of primary package, depending on what you do, but for products where the margins are very low, it's nearly undoable because the costs are so high. It's very complex in operations to apply. And also the cost of the implementation and data management, etc., is really an issue at this moment of time.
Yeah, what I'm referring to is actually not the drugs that are cheap. So we're looking at chemotherapy, and I'm not aware of any cheap chemotherapy drug. And it's always one unit, it's one vial or one ampule or something like that. There you could do this, but clearly, I mean, what you were just describing for the clinical trial, that is study medication. So it's not an approved drug which is being used. And I was referring to phase 4 trials, which are being conducted with drugs that are already on the market. And you could just say, well, I want to know how well the adherence for Versenio's, to name an Abbott product, for instance. No, actually, it's an AbbVie product, sorry. If you had one of these products and you would want to know, whenever the patient takes a pill, he needs to scan the pack he holds in his hand, and that would be something just to validate whether the patient is actually adherent to the medication or not. It's just an idea that I had back in the days, and I'm not sure whether in phase 4 trials, where we don't have this control, this strict control that is required in phase 1 to 3 trials, whether we could not utilize that important data that is on the secondary packaging.
Craig, any views from your side there?
Yeah, I think Martin touches on an interesting point, because we're seeing some piloting of serialization at primary pack level, which is far from a given. It's often the case today where there's not even a GTIN at primary pack level. So we're seeing some piloting of it. One of the challenges is obviously if this is being done downstream by a third party, by the wholesaler distributor, it's then serialization that's not based on the GTIN of the manufacturer, market authorization holder. So the dilemma there is, do they treat that as a repackage or relabeler, which is kind of how they're approaching it for the time being. I think we're going to get there. It's going to be a while, though. One of the other points that Martin touched on is, how this could dovetail into evolution of the FMD. And what I imagine will happen at some point in time is that we'll transition, at least on this side, it's happening in other jurisdictions already, transition from the current verification model where it's just scanned at the point of dispense to make sure that it's actually legitimate and hasn't been decommissioned, over to a track and trace model where you have more visibility end to end, so you know the path that this product has taken, who's been in touch with it, and so on, to enable not just the validation, verification, but also tracking, tracing, chain of custody, maintenance of that to make sure you're shipping out soon expiring products earliest, and also in case of a recall that you can find that product. I think that's where we're headed. I think we're going to need to be patient, though.
Shaba, any view from your side? We can't hear you.
Sorry, I was muted at my headphone. So I'd like to reflect to Martin. So when we are talking about serializing primary package, I understand the reason why it can be useful. And I'm just thinking about that when we are talking about primary packaging, do we really need to think about serializing primary packaging? Or can we consider only about to apply a machine readable information on a primary package to ensure the patient safety, and what Marcel said, to increase the safety of dispensing?
So
and maybe it's a question to the other ones.
Yeah, it's early dawn, but also the other thing, what is, and I want to give it back to the panelists, is like what I'm reflecting, and I'm only working in pharma now for 4 years, so I'm the freshman here, is like, look, Amazon is overwhelming me with products, but my pharma companies, and I'm a good customer, believe me, never touches me, never know anything about me. So I don't understand why, because I'm thinking it would be better that the pharma companies know more about me, because with my issues what I have, then Amazon know what I ordered yesterday on Amazon Prime. So why is that? And I'm thinking that leading into personal medication, again, if they're knowing more about me, it could be more personalized from refilling, everything there. So why is still there a gap, Marcel? Is it still the industry, or is it?
No, it's a regulation. It's the regulation around. So when it is about healthcare, people are very concerned. So and that's what you see. If they go to consumer accounts, they are very easy. But the trust in pharma is less lower, I think, in order because it's touched them healthcare. And people saying that people think when you have a healthcare company, you should not make money because you sell medication. And this is the idea behind, I think, and they are very concerned about privacy and what is done with the information, how the information is used, if it is accessible by insurance companies, for example, all those kind of things, and that makes it very difficult.
But is it?
So also,
I ask you know, I live in the US, and as you know, we don't have any privacy law in the US. Everyone knows everything, but HIPAA rules are pretty much there. But we need, in order to get personalized medication and personal health, where is the trade-off? Is it the data protection we need to give up, or what are we need to giving up? Because the two things together doesn't work. You know what I mean? Because they are eliminating each other. So where we need to work on, again, coming back to the panel, that we can get to that point is that it's making sense for the order, for, you know, that we have the benefits.
Well, I fully agree, and I can only say my country, it's even worse than in all of Europe. We're completely, for the lack of a better word, completely anal when it comes to data safety, and we're actually, this is more like we're standing in our own way. Even within the borders of my own hospital, I do have only very restricted access to patient data, but at the same time, doctors send confidential data via WhatsApp to their fellow mates, where I think, well, why do we handle one thing different from the other? When it concerns patient safety, it should be the first thing that comes to mind, that the pharmacist does have access to the patient's data to see what medication he received, but this is a long way from here, and other routes of information are not so strictly controlled. And I personally would have no problem whatsoever for pharmaceutical controlling the stream of their very own products from the point of receiving here in the pharmacy goods in until to the patient's bed. I would have no problems whatever with that, but I'm not sure whether the pharmaceutical companies themselves would like to have that option. And they always say, well, this is all too costly for us, and now we have spent so much money into the European EMVO system that we don't want to spend any more. And since the EMVS is an end-to-end system, we don't have any track and trace possibilities at all.
You touched on the necessity of serialization, Martin, whether that was of relevance at primary pack level. And the pilot that I had mentioned, spoken of, they're looking at incorporating RFID, which seems to be going on increasingly behind the scenes, although as a deprioritized piece, because obviously it's not required by any of the regulations currently. With RFID, once you introduce that, you need to serialize, and the hope is that you would want the same information across your data carriers, so that the same information you have on your two-dimensional data matrix, you've got that on your RFID carrier as well. So that's where, to my mind, that's where the serialization starts to play a greater role below secondary pack level at the unit of use or unit of dose.
I mean, responding to Saba, he said, "Why wouldn't just the product code and maybe the expiration date be sufficient?" Of course, that would the lot number, the product number, and the expiration date would be sufficient. But then again, why inventing the wheel anew? I mean, why not using the very same code on the primary packaging? Or, and I understand the thinking of JS1, that if you had basically the same code on two different items, the secondary and the primary packaging, there could be some mismatch. So one probably would have to come up with an additional code that identifies or discerns the primary from the secondary packaging in order to avoid like a double dispense or something like that, even though we would have different systems in our labs where we basically use the primary packaging and where we need to obtain all that information for our documentation. And
in GS1 speak, that would be a completely new GTIN. I know in the tail end of Marcel's presentation, he talked about the anatomy of a GTIN, and you're definitely in that case, when you come down to a different level, it's definitely a different item. So you would need a new GTIN on that. So you wouldn't be able to mirror what's at secondary level.
Yeah.
And so Martin, for your understanding, so it doesn't need to have a new coding, so you can still use the GS1 data matrix, but you use just a different application identifier for the packaging. So then you have it, but there's a huge difference, and this is what people need to think about: applying dynamic data, so like the GTIN expiry and the batch data, and serialization. But because if you have dynamic data like the GTIN expiry and batch, you could even preprint it on the foil. When you have a serialization, then it means that for every primary pack you need a new data point, and that makes it very, very complex. And especially if you can go now to aggregation. So you mentioned already aggregation. I'm also pro aggregation. Don't get me wrong, but I see also the issues that we have in manufacturing when something is going wrong in the aggregation of the data. That's a burden for companies, also for operators. It over time, yes, I think also we will go in that direction, and also I think that will happen with the F&D as well. So, but at this moment of time, we have still to deal. We are even creating now an event message system in Europe to deal with all the errors that are made. We cannot imagine how much people now at this moment of time are busy just to track errors that are reported because the pharmacists are not scanning the code but typing in and making a typing mistake. And that part we need to solve first. So I fully agree with you that in the end, it's also my dream that we will have aggregation and maybe even primary, but it's too early at this stage because we still don't have implemented the FMD in the right way. We are not using the system at this moment in time. We are not using the system as how it should be used. And if we have solved that, we can make the next step. But I'm on your side. I'm not telling you I'm wrong, but it's too early at this moment of time.
Yeah, too early. I've been hearing this for almost 10 years now. So
yeah, I also.
And
but it's true.
The last time I spoke at the European Commission on the subject, I've been told that to implement aggregation into the EMVS would take another 10 years at least. That was 3 years ago, so only 7 more years to go. Maybe I'll see the day that there will be aggregation implementation in the FMD at some stage. That's shortly before.
But I think.
Marcel, one question in there. But when I listen to you guys, it is that you see technical solutions to overcome this problem. Let's forget at the moment how long it will take. But at the end of the day, this thing to be personalized medication and patient safety, it can be solved by technology. The only thing is then the question of an adaptation, or did I understand you wrong here?
Yeah, I was thinking it's more leading to the other question that we have. So who is responsible for implementation serialization? And I think that's the issue, because we are everybody's finger pointed to each other, but we should first finger point to ourselves. So the pharmacists are complaining the system is too, but they have not invested in the scanners. They are not scanning and they are typing it manually. And then they bring the burden back to the manufacturers, and the manufacturers are using this as an excuse not to implement. So we should work much more together, see what are the issues on both sides. And if we understand this better, then we can also see if a pharmacist is aware about that he is now increasing the cost of healthcare because when he is making an error and this is then bouncing back and there are 3 people busy in the manufacturing side to change this, and then they find out that it finally was a typo, that is increasing the cost, and somehow that cost come back. and if we have this awareness, and we work together in that way, and we listen more to each other, what are the issues, and also from our side, from a manufacturing side as such, also we need to get aware, we need to visit the hospitals, we need to see how they work, what would be the efficiency gains, and only then we can come together. But we should not finger point. And this is all what I said about harmonization and standardization as well. If we don't get to work together, then then it will take 10 years.
I agree. Greg, can you enlighten maybe also other people a little bit on how far is RFID is come? Because as you know, at Blanco, we have a long history with RFID, and there's always this limitation about fluids and other stuff. And as you know, a lot of medication are fluids. You know, so can you update a little bit all of us what the standards there and how it could help for that issue here?
The technology itself has come a long way, even in the past 20 years since you started to see it being rolled out in the consumer goods sector and retail. And I think the healthcare sector was actually close about 10 to 15 years ago, close to implementing, and then decided to go with an optical carrier, which I think there were reasons for that, made sense at the time. I think what you're seeing at the moment are quite a few pilots, internal applications where RFID is being used on pharmaceuticals and medical devices. Those projects tend to be less prioritized because none of the regulators are requiring RFID as a primary carrier, which means it's there as a nice to have. The barcode is there. They don't care if the tag is there, which is obviously a challenge to driving adoption, because I think everyone was scrambling for a while to comply with FMD. Now everyone is the race to make sure that everything is in place for DSCSA and other regulations as they appear. So I think we're going to see it being rolled out broadly across healthcare, but I think it's going to be, until it starts to show up in regulations, it's going to be a while. We're going to see it show up more in a staggered way rather than across the board. But it brings certain considerations and challenges with it, which need to be thought about, and it's the issue of serialization, because I think Martin touched on an interesting point. So, unlike barcodes, RFID requires serialization, and it shouldn't be just any serial number. It should be the serial number for that trade item, what you would see as application identifier 21 in a linear or two-dimensional barcode. That's what you should see in what we refer to as the SG10 barcode level. So I think we're going to see more and more of it. It's going to be a while yet. We're trying to advise users and their customers who are deploying to make sure that what they're doing is as future-proofed as possible and likely to be interoperable down the road with anything that changes. And especially it's difficult to predict what regulation is going to look like at the point in time where the regulators say we recognize RFID as a primary carrier. For me, the missing piece, Alf, is not just RFID, but also what's done with the data, particularly downstream at the point of dispense, because even with a barcode-based system, when we're seeing the need to have things like expiry lot batch on carrier, and it's one thing that the regulator requires that, which is why it's there. But in an ideal world, in the near future, the dispensers will be in a position to, at the moment a shipment leaves their supplier's facility, the receiving party, the dispenser, already knows what's inbound, thanks to aggregation, but also thanks to a complement of the commissioning information. So the lot batch and expiry information around serialized product, not just the aggregated information on the packing hierarchies. I would love to see that happen, because I think that will make the supply chain visibility more of a reality.
But there are also,
yeah, maybe also to add to what Craig was saying, and therefore I think also the harmonization and standardization is so required, because what he already mentioned, that the optical application identifiers is the same as in the RFID. So if we implement now the system with the optical requirements, we use the same application identifiers, and we are not drifting away from the GS1 standards, then we are able also to switch later on easier to RFID.
I would stress that They should be, Marcel. It's a good point.
Exactly.
They're not by default. They're not that way. They need to be. And some of the challenges that we see in practice in some of the pilots is that it's not necessarily done that way, which obviously is a big impediment to interoperability and scalability.
But what I'm hearing here is also is, you know, is what Marcel said. I think we need better IT systems who can talk to each other, because no matter what, the data has to be carried end to end, and we're not doing a good job there at the moment for the full visibility where we can help you. Then still the question is, who is paying for it? You know, is it the manufacturer, or is it the customer, whoever is who is paying for it? And then comes the third dimension in there: how quick, what time are we doing to implementing it, to fulfilling all the needs we have for the industry? So with that, where are we on a scale 1 to 10 to our wishful goal of, you know, personal medication? Are we at a 1, a 5, a 3, an 8, a 9? So where are we here on that journey, on that endeavor?
Is 1 a low, or is it 1 a
Low,
high?
low, sorry, low is 1.
What I learned from what my father always saying is, who is ordering the musician is paying for it. and that's not happening.
Yes.
So it's always easy. It's always the other party that has to pay.
Sure.
And if that's still the issue, then we don't solve it. It's the musician.
But again, from a 1 to 10, 1 the lowest, 10 the highest. Martin, where do you think we are on this endeavor?
At best, at a 2.
Okay.
At best.
Marcel?
No, I would say 5.
Correct?
Once I've gone off mute, I would say 5.5.
Chava, what do you think?
4 to 5.
You guys are really optimistic here, but good news is, you know, that we are optimistic. But then comes again. So but what is the one? Doesn't matter if we are a 1, a 4, or 5, or 6, or 7. What is the one we can do in a very short time frame with the least cost thing? What makes a huge impact quickly in order to get to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, I could say just get rid of it. That would be the easiest thing for me. For apparent reasons, we cannot do that. I could give Big Pharma a hint what they should do, because at least in my country, there is a real untapped resource. Only few companies have realized the opportunities there are. And the reason being is that so in my country, the sick funds have contracts with the pharmaceutical companies, so they tender their products and they receive kickback payments from the pharmaceutical companies for each pack that is being dispensed. And now we know for a fact that there is a lot of things that do not go the way they are. So there are prescriptions written out and seemingly filled by the pharmacists, but the medication is never handed to the patient. And the only way in controlling that is actually registering the serial numbers and transmitting them to the sick funds, because the sick funds would need that. And we actually have a use case in our very own hospital where we do have to submit each serial number of a certain medication to the sick funds because they have such a contract with a pharmaceutical company. So there is an untapped resource where you could get at least some financial benefit out of this entire mess that has been created, mainly by the pharmaceutical industry themselves. And so I think that one could utilize that. It's not for the benefit of the patient, obviously, but certainly there is some money hidden in there, and the insurance companies are interested in that information as well. They want to know what status does the pack have that the patient receives, and is that pack, I mean, once the pack number, the serial number has been decommissioned, then this pack can certainly not be given to someone else. So that information must be correct then. And I think that is one way in doing things, but Other than that, I don't see anything useful unless we switch to a real track and trace.
Marcel?
Now, what I think still, what we can do is working more on the harmonization, especially also in the countries that are still coming up. So I know this is, we are talking now about Europe and here, but there's a lot of going on for the countries where we have the most of counterfeits, where civilization is not implemented yet. So we have implemented here under the flag of counterfeit. But the biggest countries in the world where we have the most counterfeits have no civilization yet. I think that that's really an issue. And there we really should work together also on harmonization and drive the cost low. So that we don't end up there by having the medication so expensive that nobody can buy it anymore. Because it makes no sense to protect people when they cannot afford to buy the product anymore. And that's a concern. And then what Martin said, it would be really bad if we implement something there and it's not useful. So it should really be to protect the patient.
Right.
I'm going to latch on to pieces that both Marcel and Martin mentioned in terms of, I also share the wish that at least on this side, that in the FMD space, we'll be moving at some point towards a track and trace model. To that end, so those of you who are not familiar with GS1's EPCIS standard, we're about to release the first major revision of that. That's been done in the past 15 years, which we think will lower adoption hurdles for users and their technical developers, and includes a host of new features, including support for detailed sensor data, which I noted that sensors were discussed in the core team, was discussed extensively in the first part of the session this morning. We're also in parallel working on an update to the EPC tag data standard, which describes how you encode GS1 information onto RFID tags. And this will make it a bit easier and more natively interoperable to go between GS1 barcodes and EPC RFID tags. So we're hoping that will assist users in driving for visibility. I think that it's important for companies increasingly to combine what they're doing with for regulatory mandates in conjunction, having the longer, broader picture to see how it can be applied for operational efficiency and inventory accuracy as well. Because I think sometimes in trying to comply with one or strive towards one goal, it's easy to lose track of the other one. And the most successful deployments that I'm seeing currently are the ones where they've got both things in mind, the regulatory goals, but also the broader long-term picture in terms of what kind of an organization it can be and the supply chain do we want to have.
I think Martin mentioned a key thing. So as we discussed, so serialization costed a lot of money for all the participants, especially related to EU FMD. But I think that at the moment, the most of the participant cannot see where is the value in it, and till there's no motivation, no new motivation for manufacturers and wholesalers to see where they can find value in it. To be honest, how they can make money from it. So that's it. What we are talking about. It will be very hard to step to the next step. But when the manufacturer will see that there's money, and there's value in these data they are generating and they are managing, I think there will be a higher chance to go to the next step.
So for me, let me representing also the end customer. I hear you. me as a user, as a patient, because that's how we started the discussion here. I would wish it coming earlier, and I understand you're absolutely right. Marcel made a good point is, medication should be affordable, but who is paying for it to get it going with all the regulatory stuff? But I think it's an important thing to move that project forward, because that's what we all want in order to have a product that makes a meaningful change. So with this, thank you again for the discussion. We will have another round in September, I promise. So where we go then a little bit deeper into things, and hope all of us have some ideas how we can move the things forward. And Marcel, thanks again for the effort to bring everybody together and harmonize. But I think we need to hear you more saying that, because again, it's a system change. And again, thank you for